Right. Thanks everyone for joining us on time for today's webinar. And as more of you trickle and join us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is really incredible. Because it's going to be a candid conversation with the human behind Humans of Bombay. Because obviously all of us must have heard about Humans of Bombay. We may have seen the stories that Humans of Bombay keep on putting. But do we know about this human who is the talent magnet, who makes sure that everybody is getting hired and they're up to speed in this high bustling startup? We are going to be having a conversation about what the India shining startup world is looking for in Gen Z, or if probably people of my generation also want to join a high-tech startup or a hustle culture startup like Humans of Bombay, or similar startups overall, what it requires to get a position. She is a sort of a chief of staff, and as Humans of Bombay team is supposed to be believed, you're not supposed to be meeting her before she's had her morning tea. She is a self-proclaimed foodie. So
I'd like to
she
correct you. That's my morning coffee.
morning coffee,
Yes.
right? That's your morning coffee, right? And Kushnam is a self-proclaimed foodie as well. And that's what the beauty is. I think most of the times whenever we are introducing any speaker, we literally get a laundry list of all the so-called professional achievements that they've got, but Kushnam stands true, or all the other people at Humans of Bombay stand true, that there is a human behind each one of us that we need to be confidently representing. First of all, telling ourselves that that's the human spirit that we're all having. Khush, I'm very excited to having this candid conversation. We'll of course be digging in as to how you juggle the chief of staff role, so to say, at Humans of Bombay, and you do that with so much of ease. I think at 6 in the evening, the kind of energy that you're exuding is already magnetic. So we're really excited to knowing more about what it needs to be a part of the startup world, what it takes to be a woman in the workforce, because I'm sure you have those incredible stories also being covered by Humans of Bombay, that how women need not leave their careers and they must take their careers seriously. And you capture those stories as well of women breaking the glass ceiling. Additionally, of course, we'd love to have this discussion about how at such a young age you are able to manage the so-called ever expanding list of tasks that Humans of Bombay is up to speed. Of course, a very recent initiatives, be it on YouTube or be it on the front of capturing those stories. So we'll be, of course, having this candid conversation. Anybody, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box as we progress further. But I'd like you to spearhead the conversation and tell us something more about yourself, the human behind Kushnam, and how do you keep so excited and energized even towards the end of the evening. So over to you. I'll let you spearhead the entire conversation.
Wow. Okay. That was an introduction. Thank you, Neerja. Thank you so much for that introduction. It was really sweet. In terms of answering your question of how I stay excited in the evening, lucky for me, I'm working from home today. So that's my secret to being excitable in this evening. While you did say, okay, the human behind managing Humans of Bombay or the chief of staff or whatever, I feel like it's not a one-person job, it's a team effort. And we've been so lucky to find the best lot of people, the best team ever, who just is always pulling each other up. Like if one's down, if I have low days, I have days when I'm not on top of my game, or there are days when I can't be the best HR, and I have my team or have my people who step up right there and be like, you know what, we got this, you chill out today. And that's exactly what we even stand for, Humans of Bombay, right? So I feel like it's a complete team effort. Without them, I can't really, I'm nobody. So that's on that. Let's sort of start off with managing HR for a startup which is part of such a dynamic industry right now. The social media industry picked up, say, 10 years ago, and Karishma was the first mover who sort of tapped on this opportunity right then and there when she saw it, that, oh, this is something which could turn into a business, and she did it, Managing HR for these people with an average age of 25 to 30 is not the easiest. Let's put it that way. There are challenges, lots of challenges that come up, which we'll talk about eventually in the course of this webinar. Let's sort of start with the most dominant aspect of HR, okay? I'd say the most time-consuming aspect, which I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, which is recruitment, okay? I think that's the predominant part which would take up, I would say 80% of my time, okay? And we're always hiring people who between 25 to 30, or the Gen Zs, and I'd say the millennials now. It's very different. It's very different from corporate hiring. It's very different from the traditional recruitments that I did when I started my career, because I started with hardcore conservative recruitments. It's like paper pay, it's nice. Okay, this profile looks very good. Let's hire this person. But now it's not only limited to that. It's not limited to your resume that I see. That's 10%, actually, if you go to see, of the entire candidates package that matters. That's like just the first page of knowing the candidate. Let's talk about a little bit about my first process, which is the screening of resumes. When people sort of send in their resumes, or how you can make your resume stand out, I'd say. Nobody wants to hear a story. Nobody wants to hear a book. Read a book. Please keep them to the point and as short as possible. That's like my one tip to every person coming out of college, or and of course somebody coming out of college or starting their career just very recently will not have a lot of work experience to put on their resumes, right? So I don't think the HR or the recruiter is really interested in knowing what marks you got in accounts in your second semester or third semester. So let's get away with you can just give us a GPA or a score and we're good to go with that. But we don't want to get too much into your academic percentage or percentile and all of that. However, if you've achieved an accounts topper or something like that, which that makes you stand out from the rest, then we definitely love to see something like that there, which is adding value to you as a person, or your achievements. What we see most importantly when we're hiring is experience. Of course, education matters. I'm not saying that. I would love it if a candidate had like a master's or a diploma in HR or in that particular field. That definitely adds brownie points. But a lot is learned on the job. So that experience, be it in form of internships, be it in form of any industry projects, which a lot of colleges offer, right? When I was doing my master's, we had to do industry projects, go out in the industry and help certain industry leaders. So while you're not being paid for it, but that's really counting a lot on your resume. So it's not a full-time job, that's okay. But you've done something out there in real world. That's what matters. Not so much as a written assignment or a dissertation or a project, That's that. Nobody likes a long resume. So please, guys, don't do that. Like, really do not go on with your life stories in your resumes. It doesn't help. Because what happens? We're living in 2023, in the age of social media and short format 30-second reels, which also I belong to the same generation. So my attention span is equally low, guys. So come to the second page of the resume and I'm like, I'm bored. You know what? Let's just skim through the next one. Because I get like 400 resumes to screen through. And if it's a life story that you've written, but I might not be interested, guys. So you really need to, know how to sell yourself well. Let's put it that way. So I think that's where I feel like how we make our first judgment of a candidate or basis their resume. A lot of times, like lately, I'd say in the startup culture, especially, and after COVID, this trend, the change that I've seen, it's getting very difficult for us to hire, is because a lot of people have now become, I wouldn't want to use the word lazy, but they really want a flexible work environment. And this is something for us to learn as a business and to adapt and change with, because in the beginning, I'd be like, me and my team would be like, no, how can you work from home? You can't keep track of people. And it's just not feasible for the company. We're paying them for the whole day, but what if they're not working the whole day? How do we monitor this, that? But you know what? Eventually we realize, as long as the work's done, as long as you're getting what is required out of a candidate or an employee, I feel like you're good to go. So this is somewhere where startups need to adapt to this culture and this change, because it's not so bad. It's really actually working in a lot of countries in the world. And we ourselves sort of saw this in the middle. We had certain employees who were like, Bombay, guys, I live in Bombay. There's no road left. I don't know how we managed to travel, but there are no roads left anymore. So there are lots of times when people are stuck in traffic during rains, or it's really bad and you can't commute. And honestly, on those days when they were working from home, which was not out of choice, actually, they had to, they work, I'd say 30% more than they would ideally when they were in office. Their productivity increased by a decent 30 to 40%, which says a lot, right? Because it takes away from that person's frustration and that whole time consumption for travel and everything. But they're also being more productive and doing more work while getting their personal errands also sorted at the same time. So I feel like this is a change where a lot of startups need to adapt, because when I do notice ads, job posts on LinkedIn, I still see people saying, no, it's an on-site work only. No, we don't allow work from home. I feel like a hybrid model is ideal in today's day and age, guys, to sort of have it as a win-win situation, right? The employees also happy and the companies as well. And you're saving a lot of costs, honestly, overheads. So that helps. I think that was my take in this sort of change I've seen post-COVID in hiring and recruitment, because this is a massive challenge. I've let go of so many good profiles only because, you know, they want hybrid and they've got that somewhere else. So yeah.
Wow, that's put the entire conversation in so much of perspective, and I love how that's the reason we always encourage practitioner run curriculum across, because you've packed certain very important ideas. Of course, how you told us about creators economy indirectly, that how Karishma had a first mover advantage of figuring out that stories can also be a business model overall. And of course, like, it was Humans of New York, and then you had Humans of Bombay, and Humans of Bombay I think is bigger than Humans of New York any day.
Fully give credit to the entire team, because like it's like the passion that they have is like, we want to create today, let's do something like this tomorrow. And sometimes the ideas are really bad, but it's okay, it doesn't matter as long as they're brainstorming. And like how this YouTube happened was a member of the team who went like, hey, you know what, let's take this to YouTube now, because we see some sort of opportunities there, or let's do like an event or something like that. And the entire team is so hands-on, which is why I said in the beginning, we're really lucky to have a team like that.
Absolutely. I think all these characteristics that you're talking about, that how things are very hands-on, you're able to make sure that your product is just like, okay, the idea comes, there's no bureaucratic delay at all, and the execution will be done with a lot of passion. I think that's what the hustle culture in startups is definitely something that most of the Gen Z people, the aspirants, get attracted to. There's this question that we've been getting, and you've partially addressed this question as well. You said that attention economy is also something that we're talking about, that how important your attention span has become, and that's why your 30-second video clips have done that rage. You also mentioned about proof of work. So a lot of times students are having this question that how can they depict the proof of work, what kind of projects can they probably engage in, particularly if they're looking at HR and all the verticals. Like, a lot of students, as we're speaking right now in the morning, we had 2 students who were going final year placements, and they said that we're an L&D professional, and it was very difficult for us to show that how we can help with being an HR BP. So then how can students juggling in the domain of HR show their proof of work if it's not internships? Is there any other way through which they can actually take up and show the proof of work in HR?
Okay, ideally, first things internship, so that's out of the way. Ideally, a lot of colleges have fests, webinars, events which people conduct. And if you've sort of been in any leadership positions in those festivals, events, TED Talks, even just external events for that matter, even if it's not from your college, but you've been actively involved, maybe it's like an NGO or something where you've shown some form of leadership, I think that really matters, because what you want to see in HR is leadership, right? Because while recruitment, as I said, is the most predominant aspect of HR, it's not the most important, right? For me, in my opinion, that's my opinion again, the most important thing in HR is people management and to be able to deal with people. While predominant, which I'm saying is because it's more time consuming, is recruitment, but the most important is people management. So if you're able to deal with people and manage people, which means it shows in a leadership position, I think if I was screening a resume, that would really add brownie points to your resume for me. For me, that would make you stand out as opposed to you winning some competition or acing a test or an exam, So I think that's more practical experience. But besides that, if that's not the only thing that you've gotten, I would say any form of industry project that you've done, maybe assisted somebody in any format. It doesn't have to be in HR or something, but any industry leader in any area of the world, if you've gotten some form of experience, in my opinion, of assistance or working under somebody or working with somebody, I think that adds a lot of value to anybody's profile, not just HR, but any person in any field, I feel adds a lot of value.
Right. It was honestly very difficult for me as a moderator to actually dig in some more things, because I think you've been MIA online. So we would really love to know more about that personal side. And a lot of questions that we got ever since we told people that you'll be coming, they wanted to know that, how did you decide to pursue something in human resources, or did it come by default when Karishma was trying to build the team and she thought that, you should be the captain leading everybody or handpicking the humans who are going to be behind the storytelling. So how did it all happen? How did it all get started? And tell us again. I think you dived in straight to the topic of discussion that was there today, but you missed telling us the human side of about yourself. Of course, we know your love for morning coffee, and we know that you're a foodie. Even though I do detest foodies like yourself who are like absolutely fit, and then you make us eat and hog it by recommending. So please help us.
That's the camera is deceiving, by the way. No, but okay, great. Thank you so much for that question. And I'd love to talk about myself because I love to do that. No, HR was never the plan. I'd never planned to do HR. It was, a lot of times, because this is a very candid conversation, I would like to bring it up. A lot of people, when they see me or when they just know me in a personal capacity, which is very different from the HR Krishnam. So when they see me in a personal capacity, they're like, hey, but like your personality doesn't fit a conventional HR person. How are you doing HR, And I'm just like, why? And they're like, no, like you're so outgoing, you're so like fun, you have so much banter all the time with people. How is anyone going to take you seriously? How are people going to sort of be scared of you? I'm like, hey, why does somebody need to be scared of me? First of all, like in HR, I feel like I should be the nicest person in the company who they can confide in no matter what goes wrong in their life, be it in terms of work or be it in terms of their personal life, right? Like I want to be that person for them. So firstly, let's change this image now of HR, which says, oh, you're supposed to be this person who's scary. You're supposed to be the one ensuring discipline. I'm like, I can ensure discipline even by being myself and being really, really flexible and easygoing with my employees. And I feel like I don't want to speak for them, but I feel like they respect that and they appreciate it. That when there are certain days when it's things are sort of sensitive, I think it always helps for me to go crack a joke, loosen up the situation a little bit, ease them down, and then talk to them. And I feel like it's really worked for me in the past. It's really worked for me. So I started off as an intern, which was also not my first internship as HR. I'll tell you a little bit about my background a little later. But when I started as an intern and I had an HR and a very typical engineering based in corporate, I was really petrified of my HR. That person like, oh, you clocked in at 11:05 instead of 11. And I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. I live in Bombay. I was stuck in traffic. Which when we're at Humans of Bombay, we do have time rules and discipline, but we understand. We're like, dude, you're not here in school. We're not like you're not in boarding school, you get my work done. As long as that's happening nicely, you're behaving the way you're supposed to with a professional ethic, that's all that matters. We're not going to hold you up for all these things. That's what HR does. Yeah, it's so much more than that. But unfortunately, to the layman outside, it just feels like, oh, but you're the one telling people to maintain bathroom hygiene and planning Diwali parties, right? I'm like, dude, we have the most fun Diwali parties, so you really need to see those if you want to diss me on that. Coming to how HR and how Humans of Bombay happened, I never knew what HR was really. I never knew what human resource even did. I just knew I had the same perception that they hire people and they fire people. That's it. I started my career as a makeup artist. I was working with Estee Lauder and very young. I think I started freelancing at 16, and then 18, when I was legally allowed to do a full-time job, I started working. And oh my God, that industry is bad. Like this Bollywood and media and stuff. It's tough. It's tough to work in it, and I realized that I'm glad I started early on. My career started very early. So I could identify, hey, this is not the place I want to be. I want to be respected. I want to be treated well. I want to hold a position in a place where people look up to me, And at that time when I was struggling with my job and the industry is crazy, like timings are crazy, you're working late hours, payments up, everything. I was constantly in touch with my HR then at Estee Lauder, and whenever I used to have any sort of communication with her or any episodes with her, I always had so much respect for her. And I'm like, oh my God, like I want to be her, comforting people. I want to be her, making decisions on who should work in a company or not. Man, that's crazy, right? That's crazy amount of responsibility to decide who's going to be working at a very senior level or who could be a C-suite executive in a very important company. And that's when I'm like, you know what, I want to do HR. And I had no clue about it. I started interning first and did very basic resume screening or just posting a job ad or posting a job description. And then I was like, hey, I want to do a little more. I'm going to do my master's in it. And that's when I went abroad. I went to Australia. I did my master's in HR and I had to come back because of COVID in my second year. And while I was here, very randomly on one day scrolling through LinkedIn, saw a job opening for Humans of Bombay. And I happened to just message them and I was like, hey, I've just completed my master's. I have a little bit of experience before this. I've also worked, but can we explore? And they were like, yeah, we can. But we're looking for somebody with like 8 years of work experience and all. And I'm like, hey, when I joined, I was 25. I'm almost 25. I'm going to be 26 very soon. But I'm like, hey, I'm not old enough to have that much experience, And they're like, yeah, then it's rejected. Sorry, it's not going to work out. And then randomly they call me again and they're like, hey, would you just do an interview? Let's figure it out, And when the HR at that time also interviewed me, she was like, I like your profile and everything, but you don't have that experience. And we have a mandate. We want this experience. And I'm like, okay, no problem. I won't. And it somehow went to Karishma and I had an interview with Karishma. It was a very brief 15-minute interview where we had a very candid chat. It wasn't very like, oh, what do you know about policy making? Oh, what do you know about HR academically and stuff? It was a very candid conversation and we chatted and we felt like our visions matched, And that's when that match was just like, okay, you're hired immediately the same day. And ever since it's been amazing. It's been a fab journey. When you join as HR, you feel like, oh, this ABC are my KRAs. I need to do this, finish it off. I need to hire so many profiles, done. Let's get it over with. But at Humans of Bombay, I started developing a motherly feeling for everyone, where suddenly it just becomes like, oh, you're HR, you're managing these people, you're responsible for their careers. You gave them this platform. And for them, like, there are certain content writers who are so passionate about working with Humans of Bombay. Like, it like melts you. It's like, wow, I was the person who could help this employee, this writer, this creative person to be here and showcase their talent. And Humans of Bombay is a place which gives a lot of creative freedom and autonomy. There's not too much like, hey, you can't put this. It's full freedom. You want to talk to this person, it's a content writer's decision. I want to do a story on a female businesswoman. Karishma doesn't decide that. Karishma can suggest, but it's completely autonomous to these people. So so I'm glad I was a makeup artist at Estee Lauder and I decided that, okay, HR is the place I want to be, And also, lastly, it's the respect. It's the respect and the love you get, There are days when they're pissed off with you. There will be days when the employees won't be happy with you, and it's okay. It's part of life. But then they'll come back when something works in their favor, and they're just going to respect you. And, it's like you're the person who brought them here. You're that link. So they're always going to have that respect for you, no matter the designation or not, So that's a lovely feeling. I think it's very fulfilling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the way that you've said that, creative freedom and you being responsible. I have been following the YouTube series of late, particularly. I loved how incredible stories, be it Urfi Javed or be it Vidya Balan. I think we literally got to know the inner human part, or totally, absolutely inspiring that was. A lot of questions have surrounded around the fact, okay, and this was of course news to me. I thought you probably knew Karishma. I never knew that you got it while scrolling via LinkedIn. So I think that was definitely, because the kind of rapport and camaraderie that both of you have is just, I think, impeccable.
I got lucky. I got very lucky with that. Trust me.
I think need to take credit, Kushnam. You need to take credit for sure. You are so warm, and I can totally vouch for it, because the way that you made me feel comfortable last year, I think it was next level, and I missed that. And I unfortunately could not be in Bombay. But I'm going to be, the minute I decide, you'll be the first number that I'll be pinging and taking your advice for that.
Thank you.
There is this question that is asked that, when you're talking about how it's not just about planning the Diwali party, but you being responsible, and it's so important to rebrand HR in today's time and day. There is this question that how does your typical day then looks like? How do you probably bucket it out as a new HR professional, especially amidst the time where a lot of people are talking about HR becoming obsolete? But I think in startup spaces particularly, there is this requirement of chief of staff like yourself. Otherwise, you can't really put some sort of a discipline to the madness and the hustle culture which is there. So tell us and help us understand that entire aspect as well, that how does a typical day looks like? What are your priorities for the day? And do you think that like I said, in my personal opinion, I think in the startup space, HR is indispensable, and a chief of staff like yourself only gets the ball running amidst madness. So what is your opinion, and where do you see the AI-based interventions coming in the startup space, in the human resources domain?
Sure. Okay. In my opinion, HR is never going to be obsolete, because as long as you're working with humans, it's never going to get obsolete. Because even if you've got AI, this is literally a conversation I was having with a colleague last night. And we were discussing, we're like, dude, what happens when ChatGPT takes over all our content writers? Do we still need content writers? Like, what's up? Even to use a tool, you need a human being, right? That tool's not going to be used on its own. I'm sure there will be job redundancies. Instead of having a team of 15 people for HR, that you might just need 5. Definitely going to happen. But it's never going to be like you don't need humans at all, right? Also, when that happens, when job redundancy does seep in, where I do see a lot of jobs becoming obsolete or redundant, there are also so many startups that are starting every day, every second, third day, there's something new, right? Now, every individual wants to start their own thing. So there's always going to be opportunities. It's just going to be that maybe instead of a team of 15, you might need 5, but there's always going to be a need for HR. Coming to startups right now, needing HR, I wouldn't say in the first year or two, you immediately need HR, okay? Because you're still growing, you're still starting. Somebody who's managing your in-house operations can very easily do HR, because you're not hiring non-stop, you're not rolling out offer letters, you're not rolling out exit interviews, you're not doing legal compliance, which becomes a part of HR, which is very important once you're a listed company, right? You have HR audits and stuff. And once you get into a listed company, it's a whole different ball game. You need a massive team for compliance as well. You're not doing compensation and benefits, you're not doing any other salary annexures and deductions, in terms of like your HRA and your PF, and it's very complex HR, which a startup might not need, okay, in the nascent first and second year. But once you cross a 10 to 11 employee mark, I feel like having one person for HR is very important, just to ensure that internally your assets are protected. Your biggest asset, your humans, internally everything's working fine. Their problems are sorted, they're solved by this one person, so they can go out and bring in business. So if this person is providing them comfort, like this HR is there for them to deal with their problems, whatever their grievances may be. They might have conflicts, they might not get along well with somebody else, a colleague, so that engagement needs to be brought in. Their compensation, which is very important, right? So if that aspect is streamlined, then those other 10 employees are, I'd say, 10 times more productive, right? They can go out confidently and talk to brands or bring in business. That's what I'm saying. So I think once you cross a 10, I'd say maybe 15 employee mark in a startup is when you really need an HR, because a lot of processes that come in, people can't do, right? It takes away from their time. Then how are you wanting them to also work and bring in business and also do client servicing and also produce content and post if they're doing HR functions? Moving on to the question of a typical day in my life as HR, every day is a different day. Why do I love HR? I think is because it's so dynamic. No 2 days can be the same, because, for example, you're an accountant. Okay, today you have a error in your balance sheet not tallying. Next week, you might have the same error, right? Same issue crops up. It's a very repetitive process. With HR, today I have a problem with a particular person who springs up and says, oh, this is what the issue is that I'm facing. And tomorrow another person comes up, might face the same problem, but a complete different reaction. So I have to deal with person A and person B so differently that every day is just so challenging. It's so interesting because I don't know what's coming to me, I know I have a set 50% of my time allocated to recruitment, to having employee one-on-ones, to ensuring we have an engagement activity at least a month. So you plan just an engagement activity which doesn't have to be done every day. We do like an art therapy class, or we do a movement therapy, or we do a painting workshop or something like that. But so that's part of it. Then we have, of course, a lot of processes. So a lot of paperwork also. Sometimes I think that's slightly boring, I agree, but you just get used to it, like rolling out offer letters, confirmation letters, appraisal letters, interviews, exit processes and formalities, dealing with a lot of vendors and stuff. Of course, that's all part of it. But the other part is dealing with a new sort of set of challenges every day, right? A person dealing with a brand and suffering, or a person not being able to manage their deadlines and timelines, or another person who has problems internally with another colleague in the team. So every day is a new problem. You just don't know what's coming to you, what problem is, and you just got to sort of customize your solution every time you're with a person. So I think it's so dynamic and so fun, as opposed to me doing the same thing every day. Of course, there are certain routine functions that need to be done. That's the operational bit of it. But that gets done very quickly. Your hirings, your screening, and screening resumes is also so much fun if you go to see. Sometimes I get it, it does. I'm not saying it's always a lot of fun, but it's like, hey, for example, I saw Nija's resume and I'm like, oh my God, she's done this as well. Oh, she's done that as well. And like, oh, this is also a package. This could also be a thing, where people can be so good at this as well as at this. It's not a conventional straight up, oh, he's a good finance person. So it's so interesting to know. It's like you're knowing somebody's life story. You're getting a peek into somebody's life. So I think that's very interesting, in my opinion, as HR.
There's this one question ever since we had informed everybody that you'll be hosting the webinar, and we got this as an email. And this question was you are young, but still you are the CHRO of the largest storytelling platform in India, and that is a reality. It must be a little overwhelming, but at the same time, I think your generation, or Gen Z particularly, is very, very talented. They have access to information. So what are the skill sets? Of course, you do try to screen the resume, but after the person is probably coming for the first round of conversation with you or the team members, what are the things in terms of like the bucket list, so to say, or the laundry list, that you're definitely looking at whether or not this is going to be a good stint or a healthy stint, where even the individual will be able to learn and grow as well as contribute to the overall mission and vision. And like you said that it did align for you, and it was magical for both you and Karishma, because you were on the same page. So what are those check boxes that a person should definitely make sure that they should be working in, particularly if they've decided that they want to be a big fish in a small pond as they decide a startup? So it's like small fish in a big pond is like those big MNCs where you lose your identity and it takes you years to reach a particular position or do the level of work that people like yourself are doing it. And I don't think I would call Humans of Bombay a startup anymore. I think it's a big shark now. It is a big shark. So tell us about, what are the so-called criterias that you would be looking at when you are probably recruiting, or your colleagues from other organizations are looking at. So what are the things that you're definitely very particular about?
Okay, sure. Honestly, this is literally one of the biggest challenges we're facing in the past 2 months, which we finally identified. Maybe we were facing it for a while, but we only identified now, is as good as a person looks on paper, okay, be it their educational background, their work experience. They could have years of work experience in a very relevant field that we're hiring for. But if it's not a culture fit, it all goes downhill. It all goes downhill from there. The most important thing for us today, which Karishma and I have finally also understood and cracked, is it has to be a culture fit. That person can be exceptional in their field. It could be an industry leader led like a team of 100 people. But if you're not aligning with our goals, you're not aligning with our culture, our vibe, now we started using this word very professionally as well, vibe. If it's not matching, it's not going to work out. Maybe in the first initial 3 months it might, but it's shit's going to hit the fan the minute you cross your 4th month. How do you sort of identify that now? That's a very tricky situation, and it's always like we're winging it. We never know the golden rule to hire the most perfect fit. But for that reason, we have multiple rounds of interviews. You know, we always advise a lot of other startups also. If I have a few friends and all, I'd always tell them, don't go with the first interview. Like, and always try and get 2 people or 3 people to interview, so there are 3 fresh perspectives. Because I might pick you on a bias that I might have even unknowingly related with you, but somebody else might ignore it. So it's always good to have 2 or 3 rounds of interviews when it's a relatively senior position, not for an intern and stuff, but a senior position. We need that perspective. Okay. What I really, like on how to get a culture fit, let me tell you. So recently we hired somebody day before yesterday. Okay. And for HR, we were hiring for HR, and she has 4.5 years of proper HR experience and corporate experience. And all. I was like, okay, chalo, very good and stuff. And then she's like, oh no, I've also written content for Mumbai Mirror as a freelancer much earlier on in my career. And I was like, okay, wow, now this is fab. Now I know that she has done content that's literally the whole and soul, heart and soul of Bombay, Humans of Bombay. And now she's also done HR. So she's a perfect fit. I know for a fact that this person, and then when you talk to the person and you sort of understand that they've done kind of similar work in HR, or they've got a little bit of startup experience, or they know they can hustle when it's required. They're not the conventional, like, hey, it's 5 p.m. I want to go home. Matlab, salary time pe milega na. They won't ask you a lot of questions, because when a person asks too many questions, we already feel like, oh, this is a red flag. Like, this person might not want to adapt, because a startup or this generation of businesses, it means being flexible. Yeah, means adapting to things. There are days when a brand will say, hey, I want this at 10 p.m. in the night, so you might need to stay back and finish it off. So when a person sort of gives us that vibe that, oh, I can pick up on multiple roles, and okay, I'm easy, I'm a little flexible, I feel like that really adds a lot of value. No one's asking you to stay back late or not have a work-life balance or not be able to manage your own personal life, but a little bit of work commitment, which I see a lot in Gen Zs. I see the most in Gen Zs. Like, when I saw my dad's business and his employees as opposed to people working at Humans of Bomb, and I'm like, wow, what is this? Like the commitment, the dedication that they have, it's unmatched. You couldn't see that 5 years ago. Because people work out of passion. Nowadays I'd say 80% apply to us because they're passionate to work with us. They don't want to just work because they want a job and they want to like earn money. Of course, that's an important aspect, but more so because they want to work with Humans of Bombay. So in general, I would say when you give that interview, when you are giving multiple rounds of interviews, we're not so much focusing on your academics or your skill set or how many what sales have you done. Of course that matters, but we've already seen that on your resume. We've only taken you to this interview because we know this is your academic qualification and this is what your skill set, where your skill set lies. But now when we're interviewing you, we want you to be more candid with us. We want you to tell us a little more about yourself and how you are as a person, which I believe I did with you as well. When I was talking to you, I had the most regular normal conversation just to understand, hey, is she vibing? Hey, is this matching my vibe? Because if it doesn't, if she's very traditional, if she's very conservative, if she's very like only talking about business, work, I don't think we're vibing. I don't think it's going to align in the long run. A lot of startups, not Humans of Bomb, but a lot of startups do also play it by ear, let's put it. They don't have a lot of, like MNCs, for example, will have an entire yearly report ready, forecast for this year, and we'll do this in the next year and stuff like that. But most of the startups are usually winging it. They're usually like planning it. They're sitting together, they're brainstorming, they have their little huddle, and they're like, okay, you know what, let's do this. Let's figure it out. We'll do it. So that's the trait we want to see in a candidate. We want to see that passion, that belief in the company, and the real sort of dearth to want to work for this company, not just get a job. The minute you start making it sound very like, conventional, I've done this, before that I did this is my job role, I had so many people under me working. we don't, I don't know, it just feels like it doesn't work out as much.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think not that you're saying that having that traditional approach is anyway good or bad. We're not being judgmental, but it doesn't matches the vibe, as you said.
Yeah.
There is Yes, there was this question. I know that there is a time constraint and we have a hard stop, but probably if we could take one live question. This is by Kshitij, and Kshitij was asking that what kind of challenges do HR find in today's era, and how are you as an HR professional coping with those challenges?
Of course, as I said, working with Gen Z is amazing. There are also lots of challenges. What according to you is the biggest challenge in HR, today? Because a lot of people are like, "Arey, HR mein kya challenge hai yaar? Like, what the hell now?" But honestly, how do you, hiring is one thing, people engagement is important, the most important aspect I know. The biggest challenge is retention, yeah. It's so difficult today to retain people. It's not hiring, it's not people engagement, it's not conflict resolution. It's literally how do you reduce your attrition rate? How do you stop people from leaving? How do you stop this employee turnover, reduce employee turnover? I also a lot of times felt like, how do we stop this? How do we get people from leaving? And the first thing my mind went to was, why is it happening? Let's identify why this is happening today. As I said at the start of the session, we're in this 2023 Instagram social media era where things are easily accessible. We're living in a world of instant gratification where the minute I am bored, I'm going to open my phone and start scrolling through reels. And if a reel's boring me, I'm going to go to a Zara or an H&M and start shopping. And if that's boring me, I'm going to find a new restaurant and book a table and go and have a meal and post pictures about it. So that just says how easily our mind wants instant gratification. So when today in a startup, which is bound to have problems, of course, because processes are not set, right? You're doing it on the go. When there's a problem, when there's a hiccup that you face, people want to be like, okay, let's get up, let's leave. I'm going to get something better. Even for a 5,000 rupee raise, for that matter, a person will jump ships, and be like, okay, if this is not working out here, I'm going to move on to another place. I'm going to get a little more money, even if it's the same salary. But you're like, okay, forget it. I have other options. And people can do this at a relatively nascent stage or early on stage in their careers. But once you hit that 27, 28 years mark, people will not take you very seriously when they see shorter stints on your resume. See, for now, if I'm hiring someone at a 23-year-old or 24-year-old, I'm like, I get it. They're exploring. It didn't work. Makeup didn't work out for me. I moved to HR, right? A lot of people changed careers. And I don't diss the people who at a 30 would be like, hey, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be a dancer. You do you, definitely. What bothers me is these short stints that they do, like 3-4 months, 3-4 months, 3-4 months. I'm like, and then some of them maybe are in the same field. Like some of them have done the same HR stint, but some are like yesterday, I did an interview. Hey, this was this morning. Sorry. I was doing an interview this morning. And the person has 2 years of experience. But in that, she's applying for the HR role and she's done accounts. She's been a finance person. She's done operations also. She's been HR also. She's also done content production and management. And she's also been handling social media in different companies within 2 years, 2 or 2.5 years. So I'm just like, okay, well, where does your interest lie? So like, what do I hire you for? Today, if I hire you, in the next 2 months, you might get bored of HR as well and you're going to leave. So I'm going to put in a lot of effort and resources into training you and my time as well. But if you are going to change your mind and you're going to be so fickle, I might just not. I might let it go, let it slide for now, So that's what is the biggest challenge I feel lately is this retention aspect, because there's always accessibility. You see a new job on Instagram, job post, and you're like, hey, I'm going to apply. You see a new startup, you're like, hey, I'll apply. But I feel like later on in your career, it might not help you too much. You can do it in the early 2-3 years, for sure. Go for it. Explore your options 100%. But a little bit of loyalty and why do I want a longer stint? Because that reflects you've been loyal to the company. You've stuck around when times must have been tough. You've tried to deal with problems. You've tried to resolve a matter instead of just escaping. So you're not an escapist. I'm all for, if a place is very toxic or if the culture is not good, definitely protect your mental health and definitely step out. Understandable. But every small problem, which a lot of Gen Zs have started doing now, because they're like, "Arey nahi, idhar problem hai, we'll jump here, we'll jump there." guys, maybe try and stick around, maybe give it another 2-3 goes, because it's going to be tough everywhere. Yeah? You're going to have one problem here, another problem somewhere else. For example, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much on this one question, but we had an employee last year with us, very, very lovely girl, and she wanted to take a sort of a career break, and she said, okay, maybe just like a little mental health break and, career break. And she was with the company for around 9 months, and we let her go happily, we let her quit and everything. And she even said, oh, I'm going to come back. And we were like, who comes back like this? We worked for 9 months, maybe you're not liking work, maybe she's not being honest with us, whatever. And exactly mid-March, she messages me right now. This was last year, November, she quit. Mid-March, she's like, hey, how are you, Krishnam? Can I rejoin from April? And I'm like, are you sure you want to come back? And she's like, yes. And I said, okay, but I will not be able to right now give you a raise or a hike because you completed like 9 months with us, so it's not really fair for me to appraise you suddenly. And she said, okay, no problem. I'll wait for me to complete those 3 more months of 1 year and then you can appraise me. And I just randomly asked her, I was like, hey, offline, not as HR, but why would you come back? Because if you go to a new company, you definitely get an industrial standard hike, right? 30-35%, whatever. And she's like, yeah, Krishna, but I won't get that sense of belonging. And these were her words, And she said, it's a sense of belonging. I've created a family here and these people really matter to me. So I want to come back. And I'm like, wow, dude, you inspired me today. And I ran to Karishma. I'm like, hey, this is what she said. Like, this is so cute, right? And I think it's just lovely to see that, because when you give a lot to your work, understand your work also gives you back a lot. In my toughest days, when I might have a personal problem or I'm in a predicament, I think my work has always been my crutch. It sort of helps me the most. So I feel like retention would be much easier, which is the biggest challenge in HR today, if people just started sticking around, showing a little bit more loyalty and trying to deal with situations instead of just, jumping from one place to the other. So, but yeah, the biggest challenge as I still face is retention.
Wow, I think so beautifully summed up, and we are of course really loving how you're putting those real life anecdotes from your experience of dealing with the humans behind Humans of Bombay, and that's really making it richer. And for sure, we're going to be troubling you for another webinar. I know there is a hard stop, and there are a couple of
Another
who are.
question.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're saying. Asa, please feel free to put your question in the Q&A section. And we have received one more question, and that we'd like to address. And then, of course, we'd love to hear your last minute thoughts. And this has predominantly been around that how did, of course, like you were scrolling, like you mentioned, but this question had come before you elaborating this. So can you just help us understand that how Humans of Bombay clicked in terms of, like, you said that you were into makeup and then you scrolled in and finally you thought that this was the opportunity for you. But how did that original mission that Karishma had, one story at a time, making sure that the stories are being told to people, how did that finally resonate with you when you thought that this is going to be like a proper switch?
Okay. To be very honest, as opposed to what the usual answer I get when I ask people why Humans of Bombay, I was never a person who was very interested in content. I was never a person who was very actively scrolling through social media at that time. So my interaction with Humans of Bombay was limited. I knew of the company and the work they did, but I was never actively involved in every story that they posted and stuff. And when I even joined, it was a very intuitive decision I made. I said, hey, you know what, let's just try it. To get to work with such a platform in itself is a huge deal. Let me go with the flow and figure it out. It was never like, hey, I want to do this for this team and I want to make them like this and that. And when Karishma and I started working together in the initial 2-3 months, and I'm like, hey, this person's vision and this person's culture that she's created here is so amazing. It's so like inspiring. I want to be part of it and accelerate it in whatever capacity I can. And every time I would do any small, even one minuscule of a job to accelerate or make their work better, the appreciation that I would get and that feeling of fulfillment that, hey, Krishna, you got this person for us and look what we've been able to achieve today because of this addition in the team, that was just immaculate. And you're just like, you know what, to be in this position and to give back to the world and the society, when I didn't come with that intention. I didn't come with the thought that, hey, I want to like be a part of these stories and stuff. That was never my intention. But then when it automatically became that, which always happens on the go, I feel you can never be too sure before joining a job. That is a very organic process. If you align with your management and your top management, well, everything else is sorted. So I think that would be more of a case, instead of me already planning and pre-planning and pre-visioning how this would be. It just went with the flow.
Great, absolutely right. Yeah, there was this question also which revolved around, if in case you want to take up this particular question, that the fact that you are also part of this Gen Z, or the generation that is coming up in a big way. There have been, like you've said, that this is the generation of instant gratification. There is this huge trend of studio workers coming in. So a lot of people, like you also mentioned yourself, that a couple of people are working on different projects, but it becomes difficult for an HR to figure out where your interest lies. But a lot of gig work, as we say, this is as you're an HR professional, this is the time of gig economy as well. So what is your total understanding, that how much do you rely at Humans of Bombay with the gig workers, and how many of them are full-time workers? And do you think that the normative is going to be just getting your work outsourced and not having full-time employees? Because as you're saying, retention is genuinely becoming a big crisis in the human resource spaces for various reasons that we're able to see. So where do you see, a very generic question, that, what is the future of work like, not just in startups, but overall in India? What's the trend shaping up? What is your opinion, considering you have been into people management, handling the overall human resources for Humans of Bombay? So help us understand what, according to you, in your opinion, and trust me, after this, we will be putting a hard stop and probably having your final views on it. But this was a question.
Sure.
Yes.
Great question, I'd say, because I'd also never thought of this. But now that you've put me in the spiral, I'm gonna think. How does a business run without a core team? It can't. It can't. You need to have a core team who is sharing the same aligned goals. The underlying theme has to be present in all of that core team members, right? The content writers in our team are the heart and soul of the company. The business development team, who's hardcore pitching out to brands, is literally the breadwinner and the bread earners of this company, or managing everybody else's salaries. The HR team or the admin team is literally like the support system or the backbone of the team. Our office boys, yeah, we can't live without them. If they don't come a single day, oh my God, you should see the chaos. Because like, if they don't comfort us and they don't help us with the basics, we're not good enough to go out there and do bigger things, right? So you can't have a business without a core team. Okay, a core team is very, very important. That's never going out. That's never going to be out, because as many gig workers and freelance workers that we work with, or consultants, that's in a very advisory or a very one-time project basis capacity. But when you're doing everyday functionings of a company, you can't have a gig worker do it for you, because they don't understand the essence. They don't understand what the vision and the mission of the team is, or the company is, the business is. Of course, when we're doing a lot of shoots all over India, we can't be sending our photographer or our design team to these remote areas. So we do work with freelance photographers all the time. We work with a lot of consultants. We work with a lot of part-time workers as well. But that's all in a very either a project basis capacity or an advisory capacity. Maybe we need some creative advice and we want a fresh perspective, and our entire content team's ideas feel a little used up or a little dull. We feel like we've done all this before. Hey, let's get a creative strategist. Let's do a session. Let's do 3 months with a creative strategist, get their perspective. Once we learn from them, we're done. Our teams learned, and they've in fact gained both ways, right? We've also gotten creative strategy ideas, and also the team has learned. So now maybe in the future, they can themselves improvise. Similarly, we work with consultants in different other fields, be it a legal consultant, because you don't really need an in-house lawyer, but we need a consultant for a project, right? Contracts need legalities to be sorted. So of course we work with them. They're very important. You can't I wouldn't need a full-time lawyer in my office, but I will definitely need a legal advisor once in a while whenever I'm doing projects. So that's also important and in its own space. But a full-time employment is never going to go out. Like, that's literally your essence, right? They're all sharing certain common values and principles. That's what's making the company work. So how does a company actually run if they don't have full-time employees? That's, I think, not possible, and it's a team effort. As I started off with my webinar with this, it's a team effort. If the team's not there, we're not there. No single person can pull this through, and including the interns. I feel like the interns do so much and they're so important to the team that we can't do our jobs if we don't have somebody at that level cushioning and blanketing small aspects, which if we started doing those, we'd never have time to do bigger things. So it's a full team effort, yeah. And like full-time employment, I think, is never going to get redundant. It's very important. It's your representation of the company. That's the person representing you. So a consultant is not doing that. A consultant is just doing a project for me. So yeah, but of course the gig economy has picked up, as I said, which is also a reason for not being able to hire very easily, because a lot of people want to do their own freelance work now. A lot of people want to be their own bosses. They don't want to be under somebody else's rules and regulations. But I think that's a trade-off a person needs to make. You either want to be that employee who wants a sense of belonging and wants to make work also a very integral part of their lives, or you want to be this person who wants to be your own personal boss. And I could do HR as a consultant. I could just only consult startups and not ever work with one particular company. But I feel like I choose to be with this company because it's aligning with what I want to do. It's aligning with the way I want to work. It's aligning with the way the kind of people that are. I resonate the most with them. So why would I leave that to be a nobody and to be working alone on my own? But that's a personal choice. I'd say that's a completely personal choice. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the way that you beautifully shirked not telling us about yourself, but of course telling us about how you put Humans of Bombay team together as an HR. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about your overall journey as well before we wrap up? And of course, I know that there is a hard stop at 7:10. So in the same breath, I'd love to when you're telling us about yourself, any last minute thoughts that you want to give to the Gen Z or people who are going to be watching the video later. Any last minute thoughts that you have so that they can also carve a successful career in the HR space, particularly if they're looking at hustle cultures of startup, or otherwise generally also if they're wanting to make a career in HR. So over to you for those. First of all, I'd love if you tell more about yourself first quickly towards the end, and then of course the last words that you have.
Yeah. So a lot of my friends who know me in a very personal capacity and not as Kushnam, the HR manager at Humans of Bombay, they would never be able to see these two people together. Like, what? This can't be the same person. Because once work ends, once I step out of office, or actually even when I'm in office, I think I'm the most fun, outgoing, vibrant person who's always having some form of banter in office, maybe pulling someone's leg. I'll go and trouble my employees here and there a little bit. I might just lie to them and be like, hey, tomorrow's holidays cancelled or something. All in jokes, all in fun and games. Like, it's a rule where you can't leave your laptop open in office, but a lot of times all these employees forget to keep their laptops open. So one day, I think repeatedly I was telling this person, and listen, you need to shut it. There is a lot of confidential data on your laptop. And this person wasn't doing it. I was like, okay, cool. I sent a resignation letter to myself. It was a very random, funny resignation, but or I'll mess with their diaries or I'll write something if they leave it open. So I love messing with people in my office. And I think that sort of creates such a lovely relationship with all of them, where even if they have a problem or if they're talking about something as simple as sensitive as a salary appraisal, it's so easy because they find it so easy to do it with me because they know I have this relationship with them, there are days in December or like certain times when festive season, basically Diwali in December, when the work doesn't happen. Yeah, a lot of brands don't want to answer calls on me. So as soon as it's half day, I'm like, chalo, I love the movie Welcome. So I'll be like, come on, let's all watch Welcome. Or I'll make them all watch some Akshay Kumar movie because I'll be like, I love it. So we all have to watch it. I'll call for popcorn. So many times I'm screening the match in office while working. Literally, it's a normal day. Everyone's working, but we start screening the match because you're like, why not? And I do it. And I'm like, because I want to watch the match, I'm going to watch it, and if y'all want to join me, go for it. So I think to create, and in the beginning, Karishma was like, Kushnam, are you really doing this? And then eventually she's like, this is working. This, as long as it's not hampering work and as long as it's blurring that weird professional awkwardness, and we are all now friends. in a manner where I can enforce discipline when I have to, but in a very subtle manner where I don't need to be a teacher or a principal or a warden telling them, hey, don't do this and don't do that. In a very comforting manner, I can resolve a lot of big issues. So I think this personality trait of mine has really helped me, where I always am this funny cookie who's always trying to crack some dumb jokes. And, I think it helps. Yeah. So can we have a little more lighthearted HRs, once office ends, once I'm out of office, I have my own personal life. I love socializing. I'm a typical Bombay girl. I love going to events. I love going out for meals and movies and everything. Yeah. So, and I love that I can have a personal and a professional life balance, because my company allows me to do that. And my company respects that, they're like, I'm like, hey, I want to go to the gym after my work, no matter what. And they're like, yeah, sure, you go. Like, no one's going to be like, how's that more important than work? No one's going to say that. And that's lovely that I have such people around me who understand these things. Because only if I'm happy in my personal and space is when I can bring all that positivity to work. And this place allows me to do that. And that's literally moving on to my parting thought. I mean, I don't really think I'm at a position in my career to give any parting thoughts or advice to a young professional, but I definitely want people to look at HR as a more easygoing and a fun department, not something who's somebody who's marking your behavior or constantly monitoring you, or somebody who's sitting on top of your head, calling you out for any personal things in your life. Hey, we don't do that. Like, we want to ensure you're happy in this company, so in return you can do good work for us, right? Because it's only counterproductive for us to constantly poke around our noses into your personal matter, or like constantly monitor somebody's behavior, personal, professional, whatever, because that's only going to make them awry of being in that place. It's just going to be like, hey, I feel suffocated. I don't want to be here. And we're Gen Zs. We really don't want somebody doing that. So I just believe that, the newer generation of HR to be more flexible, more easygoing, to not come from a lens of like, hey, I'm above you, I'm your superior, I'm HR, like, you don't talk to me like that, to being like, hey, I'm your friend, I'm here to sort out your problems, I'm here to ensure your work is done smoothly. And that's what's going to give me fulfillment. So I think that's the perspective I would say, if you take on the next generation of HR, I think it'll really help a lot of employees. Yeah, it's going to help and make lives of a lot of people easy. And that feeling at the end of the day when you go home and someone thanks you, like, you know what, I was in the trenches and you literally helped me through it or pulled me through it, even with just your words, it's the best feeling. It's so satisfying to get that. So yeah.
Wow, I loved how with excitement you ended, and when you were talking about the fun, outgoing, vibrant person that you are, I was already regretting. I wish that the Bombay thing could have happened, and then I would also experience that. But pleasure interacting
Like,
with
our office is so much fun. So come 7 p.m., suddenly the lighting changes and the food comes out and music is blasting. Also one more thing about Humans of Bombay is always music playing. So even if like we have a very important person coming in, it could be a producer, it could be a top-notch comedian, a stand-up comedian, whoever's coming in, there's still like our music playing and our design team playing like that emo Hindi music, and and nobody stops them. Karishma will never say, hey, lower your music because we can't have this meeting. Unless it's of course like a recording or a video being shot. There's so much like comfort. Yeah, you just feel so good. You feel like your employers care about you. And that's what I love at this place.
I think, to borrow the word that was used by the employee who came back, the sense of belonging that you provide, I think that is something which is priceless. I would love to invite you once again, because I don't think we are anyway done with the conversation. But thanks so much for relenting at such a short notice. It was a pleasure interacting with you, genuinely.
All mine. I love doing this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Aishwarya, for putting this together. Thank you again, Krishnam. It was fantastic hosting you today.
Thank you, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Sharia, thank you.